Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome to 5 9 in a one-stop co-op shop, where I go over 5 things you need to know about a game in about 9 minutes or less, something like that. Today I'm taking a look at Daybreak, a fully cooperative game for 1 to 4 players in which you are playing scientists and environmental activists, and your job is the grandiose mission of reducing the world's carbon output to 0 or below. Mechanically, it is a card combo game in the realm of a Wingspan or Terraforming Mars. Don't take my word for it, it actually says so in the rulebook. It says we like those games, and so we wanted to make our own cooperative version. So you're going to get a big fat stack of cards, and along the way, you're going to be building your engine and firing off the biggest, most planet-saving combos that you can. How does this game measure up to those other card combo games? How does the cooperation work? Let's go to the videotape and find out. Disclaimer, I was provided a review copy of this game by the publisher. My number 5 at Clear Pro is the theme and presentation of the game. So much of this game screams optimism and just a very well realized and researched experience. So there is a bad guy, so you are going to have to deal with your carbon. So you get emitted into the atmosphere and eventually raise the temperature of the Earth, bringing out crises. However, lots of ways to fight back. The Earth itself fights back via these forest and ocean tiles, and then you have your deck of technologies that you'll evolve, drawing down the temperature, letting you fight back, eventually reaching that 0 carbon world. Love the visual there. In addition, just from a production perspective, you have these holders, which are pure cardboard, FSC certified, which means that it comes from regenerative tree farms and that kind of thing. Everything else is cards and cardboard. The one thing I have a question about is whether the cards have adhesive, because that doesn't biodegrade very well, but you could tell most of this package will just disappear into the earth when you're done with it over a long period, won't leach microplastics into the environment. So theme and production unite, all a Clear Pro. My number 4, we're going to go mix here, is the solo mode. So these are the 5 cards that you start with, and they are the only 5 cards you start with in solo. That evolves pretty quickly, but you do have your beginning cards for a little while, so I'd like to explore different early strategies as an official part of the base game. Maybe that comes in an expansion. A little bit more of a difficulty is the group projects. So you will build your technologies individually, but you also have access to these global powers that are available to everybody. These are pretty cool, but these were the ones you had to remove, which is basically half the deck. These are only in multiplayer, which you know from that symbol, no solo. That felt like an opportunity to have like, okay, in solo, do this. A couple more things could have been done over there. So again, I like it in terms of a solo, but I feel like there could have been more done to make it a little bit more robust. Last thing I'll say about the solo is that I feel like it is a lot more prone to swinginess than the multiplayer, which is a difficult thing for me. So much of the game relies on how much carbon you get, especially early. So if you're able to manage it off of that first round, you get the proper cards, then you may add 1 band, and then the crisis cards become unmanageable. You don't roll this die as many times, etc. If you don't get the right card draw for that in solo, or heaven forfend, if you want to explore an alternative strategy rather than directly capturing your carbon as of turn 1, then you're in a lot more trouble. So this is massively different in terms of how much the game hits you relative to this. And the difference could be 1 cube. It regulates how many times you roll this crisis die. All of these cards you're going to get with all of them every single round become worse. The game can become really hard and frustrating. You get that negative cascade if you get too many of these early. On the other hand, if you manage the cubes early because you got the right draw, then the game is kind of a cakewalk. That's what happened in my playthrough, able to get rid of carbon very early, and I walked to victory. In multiplayer, that's not nearly as much of a problem in my opinion because the card draw evens out. In solo, I think you're a little bit too prone to swinginess in both ways, too hard and too easy, depending on your opening draw. Wish there was a way to address that. For my number 3, we're going to go the 2 to 4 player cooperative, and I'm going to go pro with a caveat that I want to make clear. So each player is going to start with their opening zone, which is Europe, majority world, China, United States. Most of the cards are self-referential, doing your own thing, but there's always a cooperative card. So like give 1 card to another player, or China, you can give energy to another player. And so that plays into the fact that this isn't a cooperative game in the sense of like I go, then you go, then I go, we coordinate our actions. This is a discussion-oriented game. So it's like, I need a card, and please hold off on you doing your thing because I need that card, and you could trade cards, trade energy, and it's a big discussion. So that's purposeful by design. They want to evoke that sense of being in a meeting, and meetings to save the world. That's very much an activist thing. That can be really overwhelming, especially if you're at 4, and especially if you're in a group, like in a setting where you don't quite know the people. This game could take a long time. It's ultimately a pro, but it is group dependent. Wanted to let y'all know that. My number 2, also a pro, is the quote unquote enemy of the game, which is the carbon. So your board is going to generate all this carbon through its emissions. It's going to spit out into this area. Some of it's going to get sucked in, sequestered, and removed from the game by your natural resilience, and then the rest of it is going to add to your temperature. That will make the crises worse. The higher these are, the more cards you're going to get. It does a great job of just being easy to implement every turn, and also because of these face down cards, you'll get hit, and sometimes it'll really bone you, but then you have resources to come back. There are definitely times in this game where I find myself shaking my fist at the crisis cards, but then later in the round, I'm able to come back. When you have that level of emotional investment in defeating the game, it's done a good job. My number 1, it has to be this way in this type of game. The card combos, are they good? Happy to report pro. Although it doesn't work quite like a Wingspan or Terraform Mars or those kind of games. In those games, you get points. So the higher you stack your tags, you press that engine button, and it's kind of endless in terms of how many points you could score, and that's its own kind of fun. Not so here. So here's an example, offshore wind. I generate energy based on the number of tags I have. So I have a bunch of tags. I can do, 6, 8, 10 energy. But the way the game is, sometimes you'll produce and there's nothing you could do with that. So you have to be really careful about which stacks you're proccing. On the other hand, the fun of this game comes in what I call the combo pivot. So you're going to have your stack of cards that are going to be able to let you do a thing. So for every pink tag, lots of tags, I get to remove some of this nasty emission. That's always a good thing. Cost me a couple of demand. That's fine. Now this stack is no longer useful with this card. That is when you pivot. So if I want to pivot and give myself an ability to give some resilience tokens, bam, I have all these tags. That allows me to get all these resilience tokens. And if you know the game, that is going to be plenty. I pivot again with another card, which is going to let me draw more cards in this type of game. Drawing cards is always good. I can keep on pivoting as long as I have cards to play. So as long as you are not invested in that Christmas tree cascade of points, and it's about building that flexibility, solving different problems at once, you can have fun in that. There is a lot of fun to have in Daybreak. So that was Daybreak. I'm clearly pretty smitten with this one. It's not that often that I get a game, I go through the review cycle, play it a couple times, film it, and then actually keep on playing it. But I'm taking this one to my local library, to my local game group, and I'm going to enjoy it with different group dynamics. Now, that's something to be aware of, is the group dynamic. It's very collaborative. I know all games are dependent on the group dynamics, but this one, because of all the table talk and the crosstalk and the borrowing and the simultaneous play, a little bit of a buyer beware. But if you are in a group that you trust and you can get that simpatico thing going, then this one might be a good fit. In terms of how it compares to Terraform Mars and Wingspan, it does offer something different, but it offers something in its own little niche. It has that basic combo feeling, but with that pivot point, solve problems, etc. If you like the sound of that, then Daybreak would really, really be worth a look for you. As always, I hope that I provide enough information so that you can make the decision about whether this is worth your gaming time or gaming dollar. This is Jason with the One Stop Co-op Shop, reminding that we'll see you at the next stop.